Hey everyone, let's go ahead and go on a drive in this 2025 Ford Mustang Ecoboost convertible. It's a premium model as well, the 200A group. Starting it up, as you can hear, we don't have the active exhaust on this model. You can get that for an additional $1225. Without it on this, it actually sounds decent for a 4-cylinder, but comparatively to the 2024 301A Mustang GT that I have with the active exhaust, this is nothing. It sounds way worse, obviously. The gas mileage is much better. As you can see, we got about 28 miles per gallon on about 271 miles of trip at about 52 miles per hour average. So decent. I think there was a bit of a headwind, and also we were driving in conditions around 20 degrees, kind of similar to what it is right now. So take that with a grain of salt with it being colder and all of that. I would have expected a little bit higher on a trip like that, something in the range of 30-ish, just because it's very flat. But even getting 28 miles per gallon is pretty good. Just in comparison, I've been in multiple road trips with my GT with the 5-liter and 200 horsepower more, and you're talking a couple mile per gallon difference on a road trip. Around town though, I'm assuming this is much better. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and take it on a quick drive. Let's see, we have these gorgeous Ember Glow seats right here. Go ahead and turn on my cooled seat. Even though it's 25 degrees, I'm just a warm-bodied person. Having the heated steering wheel is quite nice. I don't have that in my 301A. The main talking here is going to be about the key differences between this Mustang versus my 2024 GT. So that is kind of where this is going to be focused, on those key differences. If you do want to watch more of an in-depth Mustang review, please do watch that. And just driving around these streets of Indianapolis that are not super, they're got a lot of potholes, we'll say. These 18s do a good job of kind of soaking that up. In general, the other difference that I'm going to be talking about is around the convertible. And in general, this has kind of more of a disconnected feeling versus the coupe. You can just tell there's not the structural integrity above you. Also, with this being the EcoBoost, the brakes I've noticed are not quite as good. Not totally sure. I know there's a difference. The GTs come base with 4-pop Brembos up front, and then just singles in the rear. They're not even Brembos. This, I want to say, is something maybe like a 2-piston up front, probably the same rears. And it's just not quite as good. Those Brembos do a pretty solid job of stopping you. This one, I didn't have to panic stop, but I did have a relatively heated stop, and I could tell there was a pretty significant difference. And then going back to the structural rigidity, you just kind of feel like the car, it doesn't quite flex the same, I guess. As you should be able to hear, the sound from the 4-cylinder is definitely not as smooth as the 5-liter V8. Also, you just feel a little bit more coarseness through the pedal, through just the car in general. It also feels a lot more just kind of run-of-the-mill and less special, I guess I'd say. It still feels like a very fun car. It just feels like a slightly neutered version, and maybe that's because I've driven the 5-liter and I daily one on a regular basis. But this car just doesn't really feel like it has that same spunk, that same spirit. The auto stop start is relatively unobtrusive, but does take a second to turn back on. I think it could actuate just a little bit faster when you first initially step on it. Another thing that I've noticed in terms of interior noise, this does have the acoustic windshield glass that you do get on all of the premium Mustangs, so the EcoBoost Premium and then the GT Premium. And while that definitely lowers the sound that's kind of coming from in front of you when you're kind of going through the wind at 70 miles an hour or so, you do get because it's a convertible, you do get way more noise coming through your top. So if you're driving on the highway, for example, while your total noise is typically way lower, the second you go around trying to pass a truck or something like that, where there's a lot more wind noise kind of coming from above you, you then get this whole, it just sounds really loud and like it's like right on top of you, which is interesting. That's to be expected with a convertible. And you get to get a lot of benefits with that convertible. Having a Bronco back in the day and being able to take at least parts of the top off really easily was just a whole different experience. So I definitely can see where they're coming from with this. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was price. So this one priced out at current prices around March 2nd of 2025. This costs around $45,000, which is a lot of money for a 4-cylinder EcoBoost that's a premium with no other options. For context, my 2024 Mustang GT 301A, before all the price increases and all that stuff, came in just around $49,000 with a decent amount of options, and then I paid about $42,500 for it. So when you're talking about a difference of, you know, I'm not saying you pay full price for this. Let's say you get a decent discount on it and you pay the same. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a Mustang GT with the coupe, with a little bit fewer of the options? You don't have this connecting screen that, for me, it looks slightly better, don't get me wrong. But it's not that much of a difference, and I don't notice it on my car with the separated screens. If that is something that you notice, okay, take that into account. Then of course the softer touch up here. If you like to rest your arms on your doors, that's definitely a nice high touch area point that you can upgrade just by going with a premium version. And then of course your other stitching and your leatherette, in this case seats. So just keep all of those in mind when you are thinking about what would be the better choice for you. The other thing of course is gas mileage, with this getting around 28 miles per gallon. Doing a mix of city and highway, that is a little bit better than what I typically get if I'm doing a light mix of city. The city driving is really what throws it off for the GT. If you're doing highway driving, it's not bad really. It's just when you're all around in the city. On the highway, I typically get in the realm of 23, 24 versus around town in the high teens. So for this to get 28 miles per gallon relatively easily, definitely shows that this would get much better gas mileage on a regular basis. I also think from the context of just overall cost, okay, this one probably gets better gas mileage, yes, and costs cheaper to buy originally. Insurance and other running costs like that, I think are actually more similar than people give it credit for. At least when I always spec out an EcoBoost versus a GT in terms of my insurance costs, they're pretty close to one another. Not sure if that's attributed to more, higher riskier drivers driving the EcoBoost or what. I know insurance is kind of a finicky topic, but just something to keep in mind. If the delta is not that much and you want that 5-liter experience, then these are all good points that I think you should consider when you're making your decision. The other thing in today's day and world is that 4-cylinder turbos are, a dime a dozen. And while this is a good 4-cylinder turbo, naturally aspirated V8s are not dime a dozen and pretty hard to find at this day and age, especially at a relatively affordable price point. So keeping that in mind and keeping that specialness factor about it definitely has me leaning much more towards, recommending the V8 over this engine. I think one of my ways of kind of putting this is that this is typically when I get in my Mustang, it is a great engine in an okay car. It has some good elements of it, good braking and some other stuff like that, general comfort. But a lot of times it doesn't feel like that special of a car specifically. I do think it looks pretty good, but a lot of the other things, it's not that unique of a vehicle. And when you take away that real specialness factor of the 5-liter, the Mustang doesn't feel all that special at all. So just kind of that intangible of that. So all that being said, what would I pick if I had the option of something like this EcoBoost Premium Convertible versus my Mustang GT, a little bit lower end? I would take the GT through and through. The soul of it, the sound, all of that. Now, you do have the whole notion of, do you want a Mustang at all, with all the quality problems that can show up and all the potential issues is a different story. But with all that being said, thank you all for watching. Have a great day.